Time for 5 minutes with KeRusso. I really am grateful that you have taken this quest to understand the book of the Bible and this particular part of it, the Gospel of John. There are so many blessings awaiting you. The more time you spend in this book, the more blessings you'll get. You'll never run out of blessings. I want to share one that comes out of John chapter 6 today. Now, what happened in John chapter 5 is Jesus had fed a crowd of people, about 5,000 men, not counting women and children, with just 5 loaves of bread and a couple of fish. And he had all kinds of people following him. Well, you'd be popular too. You'd have a lot of people following you if you could do the same thing. But Jesus was doing more than just being a walking buffet. He's teaching people things. And as he teaches them, they are finding there's some things they like and some things they don't. And here in John chapter 6 is one of those things that they don't. He starts talking to them about being the bread of life. Now, they don't really get that. But he goes further with it and he starts saying, I'm the bread that comes down from heaven. And they really don't get that. Well, he even goes further and he says, let me tell you about my blood and my flesh. My body, my flesh is bread. And if you don't eat it, you can't have life. My blood is drinking. You got to drink my blood if you want to have life. Now, that's a weird sermon to preach to anybody at any time. And those people really didn't figure that one out. You might not be figuring it out. You might be, well, what's Jesus talking about? When John wrote this gospel, by the time he wrote it, there would be people who were not followers of Jesus who would call the people who did follow Jesus cannibals because of this teaching. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, Bobby's fixing to explain this. Well, I'm not. I'm going to let you find the answer. It's something that's part of your quest. Now, I'll give you this next segment we have on Friday. I'll give you a little hint to help you point you in that direction. But Jesus says this to those people knowing they don't understand it. What I want to draw your attention to is what happens as a result. In verse 66, he says, from this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. This is not just the crowds who stopped following Jesus. There were disciples who stopped following Jesus. And Jesus knows they don't understand. He sees them walking away. You would expect Jesus would say, hey, stop. Come back. I'll explain myself. You don't need to leave. That's kind of what preachers would do. You know, we're kind of wired to want people to keep coming back. And that's not a bad thing. But Jesus doesn't do that. He lets the people walk away. And then in the next verse, verse 67, he looks to his 12 guys that we call apostles, and he asks them a question. Do you want to leave too? Now, Peter oftentimes just speaks up before everybody else does. And sometimes he says something that sounds kind of silly. This time he says something that's good. He says to Jesus, he says, where else are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. Now, I don't think Peter understood this message about Jesus being the bread of life, the bread from heaven, drinking blood and eating flesh. I don't think he understood that. But he wasn't going to walk away with these other disciples. He's going to stick to Jesus because he understands Jesus is the Holy One from God and that he's the only one who can give eternal life. Now, that's an important knot in a rope to hang on to. Because when you're reading this Bible, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to love. You're going to love the miracles. You're going to love the blessings. You're going to love all the good stuff. There's also teachings in there that are hard. And you're going to come across some teachings that are going to be hard for you to accept. You're going to realize changes that you've got to make. Or it just might be something that just confuses you. You don't understand it. And you think, how do I follow somebody I can't understand? And you may not want to put the work in to try to figure it out. But you be like Peter and tie a knot in your rope and you hang on to that knot. And that knot is this. Jesus is the Holy One of God. And only He can give you eternal life. And if you want to have that, then you hang on to Jesus. And you work through those things. You make those changes. But don't walk away. Because you're walking away from eternal life when you do that. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. This blessing that comes from this Gospel of John. I hope you take it to heart. And I hope that you continue to follow Jesus. Now, you can leave me a message if you want to on this channel, or send me an email at booksbykerusso.com. This coming Friday, I'll get with you, and I'll give you a little hint on how to figure out this blood and bread stuff. Be blessed and enjoy your Memorial Day. Oh, and remember the sacrifices that have been made for you.